All right, everyone, we're going to do some doodle notes here for each one of our biogeochemical cycles, and we're going to start out with our nitrogen cycle. So follow along. You're always going to see your cycle up here in the left-hand corner, and it has your steps already filled in for you. You can pause it at the beginning of each cycle and fill in all of your steps, and feel free to color in your sheet. Also, that's what this is for, to help you have a little bit of fun and learn something at the same time. All right, here's the nitrogen cycle. Our key processes in the nitrogen cycle include nitrogen fixation. So nitrogen fixation basically means we need to fix that nitrogen from the atmosphere. We need to make it into something that we can actually use. So bacteria convert nitrogen gas into ammonium. All right, so nitrogen gas is really, really abundant in the atmosphere, and we need it to be able to live. All life on Earth needs nitrogen. However, we can't use it as a gas. So bacteria converts it into ammonium. And guess what? We can use it then. All right, so that's our first step. That's right here. Here's our bacteria, and it is fixing that nitrogen for us. All right, then we have nitrification. This is when we have the ammonium. Let me get my pen here. Ammonium gets turned into nitrites and nitrates. So some organisms use the form of nitrogen in nitrites, and some use nitrates. Okay, so basically it's NO3 or NO4. So depending on what organism it is. So this is nitrification. It turns it into a specific type of nitrogen that the organism is able to use. Then you have assimilation. And no, we're not talking about Star Trek here. We're talking about more nitrogen being taken into the roots of the plants or other organisms through the soil. So it's being incorporated into an organism. All right, nitrogen is incorporated or taken in to the organism through the soil. And that's right here. See these roots? They're assimilating all of the nitrogen and bringing it up into the plant. All right. You also have a step called ammonification. All right, ammonification is when decomposers like fungi or bacteria can turn nitrogen compounds from the dead organisms or waste Yep, we're talking about poop here, into ammonium. All right, so this is another type of molecule that is used. So we have ammonia and ammonium. All right. Then we have denitrification. And this is when we have nitrates are turned back into nitrogen gas. All right, so here's denitrification. And this happens with bacteria as well. So denitrification, we have these nitrates right here. They're being denitrified by bacteria and they go back up into the atmosphere where they can cycle through all over again. So I don't know if you noticed, but this wasn't really a circle. The nitrogen cycle wasn't really something that goes in a circle. Instead, it has all sorts of steps that can go all over the place, kind of like a choose your own adventure. All right, depending on what it comes into contact with in the environment. So here we have a plant that has just assimilated some nitrogen. Well, this rabbit eats it, okay? The rabbit eats it, nom, 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 okay? So now the nitrogen is in it. Then the rabbit pees, all right? So then that is going to go into the soil and go through ammonification because the fungi and the bacteria in the soil is going to break it down. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at here with the nitrogen cycle. All right. So that is it for our nitrogen cycle right now. We're going to go on to another cycle here, so hang tight. The carbon cycle. Let's talk about some of the key processes of the carbon cycle. As always, you have your tiny carbon cycle diagram right over here showing the steps of the carbon cycle in case you need to go back to it. And please pause this video so that you can write in the steps in your own Doodle notes. Now, our key processes, let's get some of these definitions going. You should know about photosynthesis from biology. Now, some of you are going, oh, I don't remember that at all. But basically, it's carbon dioxide plus water gives you oxygen and sugar. A specific sugar called glucose. So the point here is carbon dioxide. So plants are using the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to produce oxygen as a byproduct and their own food. So that's kind of neat. They are autotrophs. They produce their own food. So that's what's happening. They're taking the carbon out of the atmosphere and producing their own food. Cellular respiration. If you remember photosynthesis from biology, you might remember cellular respiration. So this is actually the opposite of photosynthesis in terms of chemistry. So you have some sort of energy like a sugar and oxygen makes water and carbon dioxide, but not just that, but also ATP, which is energy. So who does this? All life. All life does cellular respiration. So, do we do cellular respiration? Yes, absolutely. Does this cow do cellular respiration? Yes, it does. Does this plant do cellular respiration? Yes, it does. It does both photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So the whole point is the carbon is going back into the atmosphere with cellular respiration. Okay, decomposition. So in decomposition, we have certain organisms called decomposers like fungi and bacteria that break down dead organisms. And waste. Yes, all the poop that's on the ground. So right here, yes, there's a big turd right there. It's not there just because somebody wanted to draw it. No, it's there for a reason, because it is being broken down. Dead things are being broken down, and the carbon that's in them goes down and breaks down into simple carbons. Okay, it releases organic compounds and carbon into the ground. All right, fossilization. All right, this is something that happens over a long period of time, so it takes millions of years. And can form fossil fuels. All right. Finally, combustion. So this is the burning of fossil fuels. And that puts carbon back into the atmosphere. So basically you have your decomposition that breaks down into simple carbon compounds. Those carbon compounds are fossilized and preserved, and then we dig them up and we burn them, and it puts it back up into the atmosphere. That is your carbon cycle in a nutshell. All right, so now let's take a look at some of these facts. How is carbon used by organisms? So carbon is known as the element of life. Okay, it forms stable bonds and makes up the backbone of lots of macromolecules. So do you remember, we're taking it back to biology again, it makes the backbone of many biomolecules. All right, so carbohydrates, lipids, proteins. Yep. All right, super important. So there you go. Let's move on to our next one. All right, and here is the water cycle. So I know that you are probably very used to talking about the water cycle, but let's get some of these key processes down. You've got your water cycle diagram over here in the upper left-hand corner so you can fill that in on your own. Let's get some definitions down. Our key processes are evaporation, which is when you have the phase change from a liquid to a gas or a vapor. All right, so you see your evaporation right over here from our body of water up into the atmosphere. Transpiration, which is when water can evaporate. So this is a type of evaporation from the leaves. So from the leaves of plants. And so this actually does take place simply from plants, okay? So it is evaporation of the water used in photosynthesis directly up into the atmosphere. All right, condensation. Condensation is when we have a gas or a vapor and it cools and forms clouds. Make sure my pen is working here. So this is happening up here in this area, and we're forming nice big puffy clouds in the sky. Precipitation. We're very familiar with this, and we wish we could have some more right now in Texas. This is when water falls from the sky. So we're just going to say water. Falling from the sky. Okay, so this can be in liquid form, and that is rain, or it could be in solid form, and that could be hail or snow. All right, percolation. Percolation is when our water moves through the soil, okay? And not just in any specific direction, but it moves down through the soil layers. Its direction is actually moving toward lakes and oceans. All right, so there is your brief overview of your key processes. Here is percolation, by the way. See how we're going down, down, all the way down and back toward our lakes and our oceans. Okay, so on here also you have your fun fact about water and how it makes up just 2.5% of our water on Earth, and most of that is actually unusable. It's stored in ice, in glaciers, and deep underground. So we're only able to use a teeny tiny little percentage of all of the fresh water on the Earth. That's very interesting to me. Okay, so we're gonna keep going with all the rest of our cycles. So keep on moving through your notes and pay attention. Last but certainly not least is the phosphorus cycle. So here is your cycle right up here, And please take a moment and pause and fill in all of your steps so that you know what we're talking about, and go ahead and color in too. Have some fun with this. All right, so let's look at our processes here. First is weathering. This is the physical process. Let's actually call this the physical and chemical breakdown of rocks. Okay, so what this does is causes phosphate to be released. All right, so weathering happens up here, all the way up at in mountainous areas. You have rain coming down and breaking up all of our rocks, and it's going to release those phosphate ions. Okay, next, surface runoff, and included in that is fertilizer runoff. All right, so we've got that right over here. 2 areas of runoff. So the first thing that you need to know is that phosphate dissolves in water. Okay? So because of that, it can be transported in waterways and through the processes of our water cycle, as we learned before. So we're going to say it can be transported in runoff. So remember, runoff is any movement of water over the surface of the earth. All right, now fertilizers from agricultural areas can be spread on crops and contain phosphates. So fertilizers can wash into waterways. And increase phosphates. All right, decomposition. Hey, decomposition has been in a lot of our cycles, hasn't it? That's something that maybe you should remember. So, decomposers recycle phosphates from where? Where are they getting all these phosphates? From, yes, dead organisms. There you go. So over here, we've got our fungi. Back over there. And we've got our bacteria. They're recycling the phosphates. All right, sedimentation. Sedimentation is layers of rock compacted over thousands of years. If they contain marine organisms, then they probably include phosphates. Okay, so take a look over here in our water area. We've got marine plants, which these fish feed on, and then they die. And they build up here over the bottom, and layer upon layer comes down over them, pressing down with extra weight and extra pressure, and that's going to increase the amount of phosphates in the sediment. Finally, uplift. This is a geological process that moves rocks from ocean to land. All right, basically it moves them up. Get it? Uplift. All right, and that's something you can see right there. So what's one thing that we don't see in the phosphorus cycle? You've seen everything else, and it probably looks fairly similar to the other cycles. But one thing you don't see is there is no cycling in the atmosphere. Did you notice that? In the phosphorus cycle, there's nothing in the atmosphere. There's no phosphorus in gaseous form. So that's something else that I would remember if I were you. All right, we're basically done. So go ahead and make sure that you go through everything in your cycles, and we will see you in class. Thanks a lot.